Hello, my name is Rich Howard, owner of Architectural Builder Supply, and this video is to bring you a closer look at the National Guard products. This is their part number 220 WHA. And the 220 is an automatic door bottom, is certainly what it is. And it is, sorry, looking for my utility blade, but not needed. The 220. Automatic door bottom. That's what it looks like. Nice, attractive sort of profile at the top. A little bit nicer detail than your standard square edge type of scenario. Okay. Okay, needed to. So, automatic door bottom. And this is, of course, an example of automatic door bottoms, an automatic door bottom from this manufacturer, National Guard, whose name is quite synonymous with all things weather stripping related. Okay. This is the 220, which is the incredibly common unit, but this is the WH, and I believe WH stands for wild hairs. Literally, wild hairs. They use some very fun names for some of their items, like their SIA, their abrasive coating on the thresholds. It's SIA, slick it ain't. WH, I do believe it stands for wild hairs. And getting it all pulled out of its packaging here so that we can study it closer at some point. The WH is going to be the bristle version, as seen here. Oh, probably a little bit better this way. He's holding it upside down. We can see the double layer of inserted bristle material that's there, and would be very typical and common. Now, I am told that of the different insert material, bristle is really appropriate for, the manufacturer would tell you it would be very appropriate for preventing the intrusion of insects. And I have been told also that bristles and insects just don't like bristles whatsoever. But if you have an incredibly irregular floor surface, you'll want bristle. Like if you have a very pitted concrete sill that you're sealing this down onto. If you have a restaurant application, bristle does a great job at sealing out light. And the criteria that the inspector is looking for is if it'll seal out light, it'll seal out insects. But I find also that if you were, and it's not impossible, if you were going to put this down over carpeting, bristle would be a better item to use than something solid, more like neoprene. But really, it's the irregular surface that is most appropriate as far as I'm concerned, because if my finger, I'm just holding the bottom down, if my fingers were to represent an irregular floor surface, you can see how great of a job it does at contouring itself over that irregular floor surface, providing a really nice seal. That's the hallmark of bristle as far as I'm concerned. Low sort of resistance to the unit doing its job, compressing and sealing. So if you have a irregular surface, if you have carpeting, and if you have an application where insects need to stay out as much, at least as much as anything else, look for the WH, the bristle version. Now, the way to approach automatic door bottoms is to talk about what they are. There's a link below this video to a document called Product Brochure that will allow us to see the different profiles of their automatic door bottoms. The 220 is that elegantly sloped feature to the top of the aluminum extrusion. More common is the 222, a square top unit. The 310 we don't sell very often. and I don't know exactly why we don't. I don't have an answer as to why that is the case, but nonetheless, I don't see that very often. But we will sell the brass and bronze versions, the 221, the 229, if you need to have a polished brass cladding over that material, or you're doing a stainless steel application and it needs to be stainless steel. So you might have that. The slimline is, the 780 is one that's somewhat common. We've sold that before. Don't have anything to say positive or negative about it, except that I've never heard of it failing. So the fact that it's tested to 5 million cycles is probably why. Back to the item at hand, the 220. You can see that the 220 is available in a neoprene, in a silicone, and in the WH, or the bristle version. One thing that's nice about the National Guard product right off the top is that it will give you up to a 1-inch maximum drop. That does set it apart from other units. There are other units that will go to 1 inch, but when you get beyond 3/4 inch or 7/8, most automatic door bottoms can no longer extend far enough. Now, let's start at the very beginning. What is an automatic door bottom? It's a piece of hardware that's installed on the bottom of the door that automatically seals when the door is closed. It's that simple. There are different types of automatic door bottoms, not only in terms of the manufacturer, but the quality. Inexpensive, mid-grade, top-end. There are different applications, such as bristle, where you would want to keep, as we've discussed, neoprene if it's more water intrusion, silicone if you have extreme temperatures. Silicone remains flexible at very extreme temperatures. You will have the inserts, the manufacturer, the caliber, the mounting type, surface mount versus mortise versus semi-mortise. The 220 is a surface mount, absolutely. Okay. And this item is certainly going to be considered handed because of how the fact that the top is not square. You can't just turn this over like you could a 221 and make this all work. Okay. So what we're dealing with here is a unit that's right hand because of how this is going to swing, and we'll go over that in a moment. Now, an automatic door bottom is a very elegant solution. It's elegant because it automatically seals. It's elegant because it doesn't drag across the surface. It's elegant because they're very robust and heavy duty and incredibly long lasting. All make the material, the solution, elegant. It should be noted that adding an automatic door bottom to a handicap compliant opening is not going to be permitted in a surface mount. You would have to have a mortise style mount or a semi-mortise where it's either mortised into the bottom or you've routed the face of the door flush and the casing or the housing of the automatic door bottom is flush with the face of the door. Nothing can project off the door below 34 inch if my memory of code is accurate. Now, elegant. Okay, great. You say it's elegant. How so does it work? And that's really the mystery. How do they do their job? And not to bury the lead story, but it's elegant in the way in which it works. So you'll notice that on this end of the automatic door bottom, there's this bolt that's sticking out. It's literally sticking out. You'll notice on the other end, there is no such feature to that. In fact, it's hollow down here. Okay? And just go with me on this. The end with the bolt is always the hinge side in a standard installation, mounting it on the push side of the door. We have to preface this by saying this automatic door bottom is going to be installed on the push side of the door, which if you have an in-swing door, it will be on the exterior. If you have an outswing door, you need to install this on the interior side of the opening for it to work. That's because when this is the hinge side of the door, okay, what's going to happen is when this is projecting out and it's installed on the hinge side of the door, when the door goes to close, this is going to make contact with the soffit of the frame. okay, what some people would call the stop. It's called the soffit, but when it makes contact with the stop, this will have nowhere to go but in, and as it goes in, it will force the bottom to drop. And I pushed it so that it went immediately to its maximum, but obviously that's atypical sort of installation. But when this gets pushed in, this is going to drop down. And you'll notice that it comes down unevenly, and that's by design. You want it to come down evenly. It's not defective. When the button gets pushed in because the door is closing and that projecting bolt's going to hit the frame, it has nowhere to go but in. That will force the assembly on the inside to make the bottom drop down. It comes down unevenly because you want the hinge side to make contact first. Because where is the door over here? Is it at 0 degree? It's not. The door is still ajar a little bit, maybe 10 degree. As the door is closing, you want this to come down so that you're not dragging the leading edge of the insert material across the floor. Very elegant. It works almost intelligently. As a result of that, it will contour itself to an irregular floor surface as well. The problem is if you slope away from the hinge side, you have to really compress it a lot on the hinge side to have it drop down more than just level. You can tweak that a little bit, and that might be an instance where you want the bristle if you do have something that slopes away, or you might want to install it so that it's not exactly level to account for that. Occasionally you'll have floors that are out by 1/8 of an inch. But that's how these things work, okay? You're going to have up to a 1-inch drop. They are obviously handed, but they can be reversed, is the bottom line. And I can tell you right now, I will have to reverse this before it goes to the customer because the customer ordered a left hand and National Guard sent us a right hand. Because here's the door. From your perspective viewing this, this is on your right-hand side. The hinges have to be here. The door has to swing this way, so it's a right hand. Or it's a right hand is the bottom line. But that's how these work, and they work really reliably. A great application for automatic door bottoms, as far as I'm concerned, is a residential application like the mudroom of your garage. From the garage to the house. Let's say you've got a mudroom that's there. What do the kids do? Speaking from personal experience, what do? They leave the shoe, the sandal, the flip-flop right inside of the door. You go to open up your door and you've got it cut now, and you're dragging the door, pushing the door over a shoe. The nice thing about an automatic door bottom is the ceiling bar is tucked up in the housing when the door is open, so you're not hitting anything. You can literally leave a rug behind the door knowing that your door sweep's not going to be dragging over it. That's a great, elegant solution for an automatic door bottom application as well, and I think a tremendous advantage to the product. The only thing negative I've ever heard, when the door opens, the drop bar is going to come back up into its housing. That clanking does exist. And if I've sold 1,000 of these, if I've sold 10,000 of these, one person has said that's unacceptable. I understand. To me, it's not such a significant downside so as to not have an automatic door bottom. But I mention it because it is true that there is a sound when it opens, and the faster you open the door, the faster that will clank up and make more sound. So it is something that does exist. There are models on the market that have specific features to deaden that sound. Even though it doesn't bring it to 0, it significantly muffles it. So if you expect that to be a problem, because I've had people install these literally in a residential application on the bedroom doors. And in those cases, they absolutely want that to be as muffled as possible. Open, close sort of scenario. Not just the back of a strip mall where you want to seal the door as best as possible. Okay, so we've talked about the different inserts, the different models that are commonly available. This can be ordered in lots of different lengths. This happens to be a 40-inch piece that the factory trimmed to 38 7/8 for the client before it was shipped. Okay. By all means, do what this client did. Tell us the net size. Don't have to deal with cutting the item once you get it, because there's just no reason to have to go through that extra work. The factory is making this out of long extrusions. Let them do the work. They're cutting it anyway. normal procedure to order the item cut to length is going to be, because you're mounting it on the push side, you're going to unlock the door, you're going to close the door, you're going to measure the distance between the stops, or the soffit faces, the stops, and deduct 1/8 of an inch. So here's an example. How this client got the 38 and 7/8, I'm really not sure. But here's a common example. You have a 3-foot hollow metal door and frame, which is where you're going to normally see this. 36 inches the inside dimension of the frame. Your door happens to be 35 3/4. That doesn't actually matter at all. 36 inch, and assuming that you have 5/8 projection stops, 36 minus 5/8 minus 5/8 is going to be 34 3/4. Minus 1/8 is 34 5/8. That's how you would come up with a standard size. Okay, so use that same logic, or just close the door and measure the distance between the stops. Deduct 1/8. If it's a double door, you're probably going to want to deduct, split the difference. You might want to make it 3/32 less on each piece, so that they meet a little bit better in the center. There is a link below this video to a document called Installation, and it's going to go over the steps. They do go over, let's go over it quickly. If a nylon brush gasket, slide the brush clear when cutting the unit. If you have to cut this down, only cut the side opposite of the hinge side. Do not cut the plunger side. That's for sure. If you have the brush version, slide the brush out, and it might be crimped to where you might have to tap it out, but be very careful with doing that because there's steel that's there holding the bristle. Okay, you don't want to cut through that and find that you're cutting some steel. Pull it back and then trim it down. Now they're talking about the sizing for single doors. Take it 1/8 of an inch shorter from the stops. For pairs, they say a 1/16 of an inch. I was saying 3/32, difference of a 32nd. Do not cut until the drop bar is in the extended down position. Insert the 2 nails provided into small holes on the side of the drop bar to keep the bar extended while cutting. Maximum cut is 36 inch and longer is 4 inch. So you can take a 36 and cut it down to a 32. Shorter than that, you can't cut it in the field, even though you could probably trim it a little. But the factory says you can't. You have to order it the right size, the proper size, if it's less than 32 inch. Order it the right size, in my opinion. Now, these nails that they refer to, the hardware package, I've removed all the contents of the hardware package. And let's go through these pieces. There are a couple of small nails there. All that these are for is you're going to tug that down. You might want to clamp that together, but the nail is to prevent the drop bar from sliding back up. So I would slide that down, and I'd probably put a small quick clamp on it, because the nail is a little sloppy inside that hole. But it's meant to be in the down position when you cut it. The reasoning is because keep in mind that the drop bar actually moves kind of this way, so you don't want to cut it when it's retracted to find out that when it activates and it goes this way, over on your hinge side, you've got a gap. It wouldn't be very much, but there would be a gap. So that's why you extend the drop bar. That's the drop bar. And then trim it with the bristles pulled out if you have bristles. If they're neoprene or silicone, you can just leave those where they are. Step 3, if the nylon brush gasket, cut the gasket with pliers or diagonal cutters. If bristles are not secure, use a drop of adhesive to secure the brush. So cut it with aviation snips, slide the bristle retainer back in. I wouldn't use any adhesive. I would just crimp with my pliers as best as I could. I'd probably just get in there and just pinch that over slightly to keep it from moving. And in fact, I usually find that the material has been crimped. But the end of the steel retainer, when they cut it, it kind of flares out and makes it stay in place. Do not trim excess gasket from adjusting rod end, as bar is designed to shift slightly towards the lock edge of the door when it's activated. Don't trim anything from over here again. Nothing gets cut on this side. With door closed, position on push side of the door with adjusting rod towards the hinge side. Align the bottom of the case flush with the bottom of the door, and a 1/16 of an inch clearance at either end if a single door. So basically, 1/16 of an inch, flush this to the bottom of your door, mark your holes, pre-drill your holes, and then go ahead and install the material. Screws now. Now we're moving through the rest of the screw package that's here. You will get 4 screws. They're going to go right through the housing. Do not over-tighten these screws. There's no reason to over-tighten them. If you find that the retraction of the drop bar is a bit hampered, you may have the screws too tight. Although the National Guard design really isolates the screw penetration through the unit from everything else, so you probably won't encounter that, but just, again, no need to over-tighten the screws. Tighten center mounting screw snug first, and then tighten remaining mounting screws, and do not over-tighten. Well, this doesn't have a center one, but work in the center, I would say, first. Drill the pilot holes using a 9/16 of an inch, a 9/64 of an inch drill bit. For the 221 model top flange screws, drill the pilot holes a 5/64. So 221 is a top-mounted version that you can see in the product catalog that's there. Install with the screws provided. Set adjusting rod for the proper seal. To reduce the drop, turn the rod to the right or clockwise. To increase it, turn it counterclockwise. Once hinge end of drop bar makes solid contact, the other end will drop. So what that means is, if I push on this rod, it'll force the bottom to drop. If my thumb is the sill and I restrict the door bottom from going any further, you'll see that it'll drop then on the opposite side. So no restriction, or I'm restricting it, and it'll drop on the opposite end. And that's how it will contour itself. So it makes contact over here, then drops down. And that's, again, because of the degree of opening and how the door is not fully closed. That's what you want. The amount of projection of the drop bar bolt is directly related to how much drop you're going to encounter. I suggest that you get this installed, and as I turn the bolt, you can see the inner mechanism change. Once you get it installed, thread that in. Leave it stick out only 1/8 of an inch, and then test the door. Counterclockwise a couple of revolutions. Test the drop. Test the door. Do not over compress it. You don't want this smashed down. It's not a better seal. And in fact, you want as soon as the door is starting to open and it's relieving the pressure on that bolt, you need it to start coming back up, because if it's not, if you've got it set too far and it's pushing too far, your door is actually moving through the opening cycle and you're dragging the drop bar down across the floor. That will cause damage that can't be repaired. On wooden frames, they say, you're going to use the strike plate. Well, the strike plate is this little piece of aluminum, and we'll have just one screw that it could be used with, even though it's a bit big. That bar will create a divot in a wood frame. Okay, if it's a steel frame, probably not such a big deal, although I'd still use the strike plate. But you certainly want that. You don't want to just eat into the wood frame over time with this metal making contact with it. There are some other pieces here. You have your end plates, and the end plates are really important because they will allow you to finish off the opening really nice. That really makes it look super nice when it's all said and done. The thickness of that is such that it will fit between the face of the door and the face of the stop. You are going to have screws. You'll have plenty of screws to hold your end caps. You'll get end caps for both sides. This appears to be stainless. Or no, this will be aluminum. Obviously, you get one with the hole for the bolt and the other without. That certainly makes them handed as well. And unfortunately for this client, National Guard will have to either send us a door bottom properly handed, or at least new end caps. I can rehand it here, and the rest of the installation instructions do go on about rehanding it, which this video won't get into. But I can't do anything without the proper end cap, so that would be an issue that we have to resolve. Okay. Now, also in the extended description is a door handing chart. A lot of people say, hey, I don't know what hand my door is. Can you help me? Well, there's a link there to the door handing chart, and just be mindful to order it correctly, because this is a handed version and can only be ordered handed, or should only be ordered handed. Finally, I'm an advocate of automatic door bottoms. I do think they're elegant solutions to the requirements to seal a bottom of a door very well. There is a link below this video to the manufacturer's page where you can pull up not only all of the National Guard products that we sell, but also a link to the manufacturer's website, as well as a link to the full product catalog. If you are not familiar with National Guard and you bump into the need for weather stripping more than occasionally, or just occasionally, familiarize yourself, or at least bookmark that catalog, because their name is synonymous with commercial quality weather stripping. Their name is ubiquitous in the construction industry and enjoys a certain level of acceptance, at least familiarity, and very good quality folks over there, very good technical support, and it's a pleasure to be a distributor for them. Any questions on the National Guard 220 WHA, clear anodized aluminum, and by the way, it's available in dark bronze as well, and gold anodized. You can do the A for clear anodized aluminum, B for gold anodized, and DKB for dark bronze anodized. Any of those finishes. Any questions on the 220 WHA automatic door bottom, or any other National Guard product, please feel free to reach out to us. Thank you.